repeal of Good Friday and Easter Sunday as restricted trading days, shop trading and sale of alcohol Amendment Bill, first reading.
Mr. Speaker, let me begin by acknowledging the member who has been engaging right across the House and of course with different members of Parliament within the Green Party, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing for members to be engaging on things that they are passionate about, and that has resonated in the interactions that the member has had with the people that I have talked to as well. And I hope that can continue, whether people agree or disagree. And unfortunately, in this case, I disagree. And the reasons for that is we need to really focus on getting that work-life balance right. And so it is important for us to uphold workers' rights. That's important, to secure an adequate income, to fair treatment and safety at work, and to be involved in workplace decision-making via workplace democracy and collective organising. That stuff is important, but at the same time must foster a working culture which recognises the fullness of people's lives and restores balance between paid work, voluntary and care work and leisure time. And we don't have that balance within our society. Too much of our time, as the member said previously, is being spent on devices and other issues as well, that we actually need to carve out that time. And so I take a different view because, and this is not for religious reasons, but there are so few days there where it should be about family, where it should be about community, which should be about society, that it would be unfortunate if this Parliament were to roll those back. Mr. Speaker, I note that in the discussions that we've had so far, that the member talked about that there is the right for workers to refuse to work on that day, and he went to some lengths to explain the extension of those rights within his members' bill. However, anybody that's worked, anybody that's had particularly low-paid jobs will know that you don't want to get on the wrong side of the boss. There are these other pressures that play into place. Yes, you might have the ability to do something, to tell your boss, but who in reality would do that? There is a power imbalance which is not addressed in this bill, and so I have concerns about that. And I guess the issues that the member raises around one about extensions into other religious holidays, of other cultural events of significance, are important conversations to have. And I hope that the member will continue to have those conversations, because it's important to be able to have those conversations, but I can't see how that is addressed with this bill. And I also agree with the point around the seeming advantages that online businesses have to bricks and mortar. I think that is also an important issue that needs to be addressed by the Parliament. But I also can't see that being addressed in particular with this bill. So I do want to encourage the member to continue to engage in good faith. I think he has done that. But I also see all of this within the context of what's been happening in the realm of workers' rights. We've had there's been attempts to rein back the ability to strike. In the beginning of this Parliament, we had 90-day trials come back. Fair pay agreements rolled back as well. Workers are under attack. Workers are feeling that this government doesn't care about them. If we talk about the freedom to choose and the freedom to choose in terms of how you will work or not work within a particular workplace, it is also important to think about the freedom to organise, the freedom to not just choose who will have power over you, because that's the problem, but also the freedom to actually own and organise our own lives. This is a bill which is happening in the context where workers' rights are being rolled back, Mr. Speaker. And it is in that context why I cannot support this bill.
Boyack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to take a call on this bill. I won't be supporting this bill today, and I do want to acknowledge the member for having his bill pulled and for the engagement he's undertaken. I did just want to respond to some of the comments he'd made around pressure being placed on workers to work on Easter Sunday. I understand he did ask that question of my colleague Camilla Bielich, but not directly of me. And I do want to bring some of my experience to the House today. I worked as a retail union organiser for 6 years. So I represented workers at Countdown, now Woolworths, New World, Pack and Save, Farmers, Bunnings, Mice 10, Kmart, Cotton On. So large retailers and some small retailers in New Zealand. I was representing those workers when the law changed in 2016. And the law, what happened was in Tasman, they originally voted no, have changed that to yes. In Nelson, they have kept with no trading. And in Marlborough, they did make an immediate move to trade. And one of the things that happened was the supermarkets in particular were particularly bad at following the law, which required a written notice to employees, which the Countdown supermarket in the heart of Blenheim did not do. And they were required to have a process for employees to say they wanted to opt out, and again, they didn't do that. As the organiser, I actually had to take it upon myself to set that system up. So I had to create an opt-out form, give it to all of my members that they then provided to the employer. There was a lot of subtle pressure placed on employees, some of whom, like myself, have a Christian faith. A lot of subtle pressure to work on Easter Sunday. And I would say to fellow Christians, now that's not the main reason I'm opposing this bill, but actually arguably for us, Easter Sunday is far more important than Christmas Day in terms of our religious calendar. And so I do want to note that actually for us, and I've had representation made to me from Christians, that actually while culturally in New Zealand the practice is to spend more engagement around the practice of Christmas, actually those of us practicing the Christian faith, Easter Sunday is actually a more significant day. That is not the main reason I'm opposing the bill, though. It is based on my experience around that subtle pressure that's put on workers. The other thing, the member was incorrect in his first speech. Easter Sunday isn't a public holiday. And so workers required to work on Easter Sunday, or who feel or who make that choice to work on Easter Sunday, unless they're covered by an agreement. Now, many retail workers are covered by a collective agreement that does put in place time and a half provision, but there are a lot of workers who work on that day that don't receive time and a half, that don't receive a day in lieu, that don't get those extra provisions that you would in a public holiday. So there is an anomaly in the law, and without that, that makes I absolutely could not support this, because for workers to be working on a day that is of such significance in terms of being both a family day and a religious day and not receiving that extra support is something that I just personally could not support. I want to talk a little bit about that subtle pressure, because absolutely you can write into the law that there's workers' protections. You can write that on a piece of paper, but how does it work in practice? Things being said like, thanks to all the team players who worked today, and guess who gets the promotion? Probably the person who's willing to work the extra hours or work the days that people don't want. And so what you end up having is this subtle discrimination against people who, you know, like we have a lot of Pacifica people, for example, who work in supermarkets. A number of them are of a Christian faith. And so for them, feeling that pressure to go to work on a day that is of significance to them. I do take the point that there are people of other faiths in this country that don't get that same protection. Really happy to have a conversation about what that could look like. It's something that is of interest to me. But however, this bill, in my view, this bill does not cover any of that. It doesn't put any of those conversations in place. It doesn't put any extra protections in place. And so I have seen in practice over 6 years of working, people feeling pressured to work, someone's called in sick, you know, they're short-staffed that day. It happens in retail all the time. And workers, they don't want to let their teammates down. They don't want to let their boss down. And so they'll often make those decisions when actually they would rather be spending time with their family. And for some of them, it'll be going to church on that day. And so for me, this is an absolute no-go area, and I cannot support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.